Hi, everybody. I'm Kim. I'm the chapter director for Startup Run in Austin. We appreciate you coming out tonight. Startup Run is a global organization, and we're focused on connecting startups and entrepreneurs. So we're excited to have Rick Orr here tonight. Thank you, Rick. And Michaela is going to interview Rick. At the end, we're going to open it up for some questions, so feel free to chime in if you have any questions.
Thank you, Kim. So Rick is a serial entrepreneur here in Austin, and he's made a lot of traction in his career here, and we can learn a lot from his experiences. So Rick, can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and about your family?
Sure, I grew up in a tiny dairy and hay town in northeast Texas called Sulphur Springs. It was, somebody knows it, that's not common. Yeah, my summers were baling hay and milking cattle, so it totally applies to what I'm doing right now. It's kind of a Friday Night Lights kind of a town. Little old ladies come up to you on the weekend. I saw you make the tackle. So, but yeah, northeast Texas.
So how did you move to Austin?
School. I went to UT, 95 to 99, Hookham, for anybody in the audience. Those years in football felt like these years in football, so back in familiar territory. But engineering student here at the University of Texas.
Did you envision entrepreneurship during your studies at UT?
I wish I could say that. No, it was not nearly so planned. I was an engineer with the intent of going into law school and eventually doing, for some reason, construction litigation. And one of my professors in the latter part of my studies said, don't do it, we don't make any money. And so I ended up at Accenture. It was called Anderson Consulting at the time. Entrepreneurship came later, whenever my college roommate called me with this bright idea to detect Trojan horses and phishing threats, which something I had no idea what either one of those were at the time. But it ended up being a really cool company. It was called Whole Security. We sold the company to Symantec in 2005, but it was my first foray into what it's like to build something from scratch. I mean, I was kind of had a front row seat to my college roommate's experience with it, from fundraising to growing the company. We raised about $23 million for that company and sold it for, I think, $77 million in 2005. But yeah, it was a great experience, and certainly being in that front row seat gave me exposure to, wow, you can actually do this. This is not something that, we were taught in the late 90s at Texas. There weren't entrepreneurship programs. It was, you're gonna go work for big company XYZ because they paid us a bunch of money to be at the Career Center, and that was your kind of path.
So what was the inspiration behind starting your own company and getting into Tabbed Out?
So the impetus for Tabbed Out was an hour-long closeout experience at Carlos and Charlie's on Lake Travis, circa 2002. I had taken my product team at Whole Security for lunch, and it took an hour for the girl to come back and actually close out her checks. We were late for meetings, and the pain was so immediately realized that there had to be a better way to pay. But in 2002, the technology was nowhere near what it became in 2009 and beyond, with apps and app stores and a distribution platform for what we wanted to do to allow consumers a way to control the payment. So, like most things, it came out of a personal experience and a very specific pain point for, particularly during my single years, the bar scene and whatnot. You tend to lose your credit card or have to go back and pick it up on Monday or whatever the case. So lots of different scenarios that led to Tabbed Out, but that was the first.
So was the team that you built the same people that experienced that trouble at the restaurant, or how did you build your team at Tabbed Out?
Yeah, so building a team at Tabbed Out was a learning experience. It's one of the things that I wish someone had told me a little bit more about how to do when I embarked on it. Sequencing your hires for a startup is something of an art that I don't claim to know yet, but I'm still learning. Now, my colleague at Whole Security at the time, eventual co-founder of Tabbed Out, was a gentleman named David Lindley, and he was just a savant when it came to really all aspects of software and hardware. One of my favorite stories about him is we needed a calculator at one of the latter stage payment companies we were both at. And so he took some balsa wood and a picture frame and an old TI something or another and made a pin pad the way that you kind of use it for an ATM machine. So he was really amazing co-founder. But the people that were with me that day weren't involved ultimately with the company. It was actually 7 years from then, 02 until 2009 when we actually, David and I started Tapped Out.
What kept you going for 7 years?
If you remember Alta Vista and all the Lycos and the early search engines, Google alerts and things like that didn't exist. So I would wake up most mornings at the first, cup of coffee at the office and scour the internet to see if anybody had figured out mobile payments. And year after year, no one had really cracked the nut. People tried, but I guess it kept me going that, no one had solved it. And I certainly had a passion for it and a personal relationship with the pains of paying at bars and restaurants. So, I think I was a little bit lucky that no one did it the way we wanted to do it throughout that period. And, again, harkening back to the first startup, seeing the way that company was built and starting to, through the years, grow confidence through 2 other startups that this is something I could go accomplish was the other thing that kept me going.
I'm going to turn this one to the audience really quickly. Do we have any founders here today? 1, 2, 3, 6. All right. So Rick, do you have any advice for the founders in our room today? And for those who are thinking about starting their own company?
I can't say that I can impart sage wisdom, but I think the hardest thing about startups is it's just trite, as any of us know. It's focus. Particularly as somewhat of a product background, there's so many things you want to go do. There's so many angles that you see that you don't really care if other people see it or not. You don't really care if people call your baby ugly. But honing in on creation of a product that a few people will love, and I'm totally stealing from Sam Altman, who's a friend that runs Y Combinator now, but he has this class he's teaching at Stanford. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. But he talks about you want to build a product that a few people absolutely love and pine over, and you don't want to build something that a whole ton of people like. Like, if people like your product, you're pretty much screwed. It's got to be something that either people love or hate. You got to impart this passion so that you can, figure out a way to get people to change the way they do something that you feel they should understand as clearly as you do. So to do that, you can't boil the ocean, as they say. You have to find a niche, and a niche within a niche in some cases. So Tapped Out, just as an anecdote, we focused on bars. We looked at the space of hospitality. Where do you lose your card the most? Where is it most annoying to fight to the front of the crowd and actually get your check back if you want to leave? If, you don't know if the bartender's going to overcharge you for drinks, all these different use cases. And within a market segment of 1 million restaurants and bars, we decided that if we focused on bars, and we focused in one market, and we could even find a niche of consumers, which for us turned out to be initially LGBT bars or lesbian and gay bars, were a fantastic and small group of bars in Austin that we could go and figure out how to change the way people pay. And that was really important for us for how we sort of approached it. And I think, not that it's something new that you haven't heard before, but honing in on a key problem for a small segment of people is the way to kind of get these things moving in a way that investors are interested. Showing metrics and growth off of a smaller group is really more important than, like I said before, getting a lot of people to say that they like something.
That's good. Are you involved with any other companies or apps?
I advise a couple of, actually, Capital Factory company, Aceable, since their inception, and another really popular app here in town called Favor. Great way to get pizza late night or Athenian grill in the middle of the day if you don't work downtown because you're addicted to Greek food. That's just my own personal experience with it. And other than that, Real Savvy, which is my new company.
So with these, I'm sure you've seen a lot of different scenarios. And do you have any tips on how to get funded, or any tips on how to deliver the pitch for these companies from when starting one?
You know, I think fundraising is an interesting and arduous experience. I can say it gets a little easier after you've done a couple of startups, particularly if you founded one that got some traction. But even at the end of the day, people aren't going to fork over money unless they think that you've got a product that people are going to like. So the simplest thing to do is build a product that people are going to love, and pitch how you've measured engagement and cohort analysis and things that the investment community will understand is the beginnings of something important. I think Jeffrey Moore is someone that I've followed a lot through the years. He's old as time when it comes to marketing strategy and startup strategy, et cetera. But he talks about a concept called the bowling pin strategy. And again, it gets back to that focus that, you know, if you can look at your market as a series of pins, the front pin has to be the one that you can so clearly and confidently knock down. And going into an investment pitch with a plan, or certainly proof points that you've begun to knock down, that initial part of the market, then the rest of them will fall. And that's a really simple way to kind of organize your thoughts around a pitch, I think.
Was there anything you felt unprepared for, or anything that surprised you along the way?
I think everything surprised me. It's particularly with Tabbed Out. Tabbed Out, so a little background, whole security. We sold to Symantec. I spent a couple of years with Symantec. I connected with the founders of NetSpend here in town to do international prepaid company. I was the 5th employee there, and that company still continues today. It's called Rev Worldwide. Empower Labs was another early name of it. Tabbed Out was the first time that I kind of embarked on my own. So while I picked up interesting tidbits from the founders of the previous startups, there's nothing like doing it on your own. I think the things that surprised me were more along the lines of not product and how you raise money and some of the challenges that you would certainly expect as you try to figure out a new way of doing things. It's really kind of gets back to the people side of building a business. I don't know that you can learn that without going through it firsthand, that as you build an executive team, you build an early team that you hope has the same passion that you do for the product. People are people. And as the team grows larger, you sort of, as you'd expect, insert politics and different things. And those are the things that can be incredibly crippling. So I think, I was surprised at truly how quickly you have to make decisions on personnel. That, they say hire slow and fire fast, and it's a wonderful little adage, because the startup lifeblood, if you're not making revenue, like most don't in the early days, it's cash. And you go and you fight, claw, and you convince smart people to give you some of their money. Every month that you waste on any part of the team that's not moving the ball forward together and lockstep is the most important killer, I think, for great ideas.
What is something you wish someone had told you when breaking into the app market?
How do you get to the top of the App Store ratings? No. I guess it's less about the app market. That just became a distribution channel vis-a-vis the internet as the last few years have sort of elapsed. It's more about how do you manage double-sided markets, and I tend to find myself in them seemingly all the time. I think they're hard to solve, which is why startups, I think, many times try and approach them. But from a marketing perspective, apps are a point of friction that today's technology is just now starting to enable, to work more easily. So case in point, with Tabbed Out, we had this challenge of, from a funnel perspective, get someone to learn about it, then get someone to download it, and then get someone to remember to launch it when they walk in to the restaurant to open a tab, and then ideally get them to remember to launch it when they're leaving the place. Well, some of my parting kind of activities at Tabbed Out prior to leaving in July were focused around the BLE technology and the things that today's world is making much easier. I think what we didn't know about app marketing, then was really along the lines of how do you get a physical world, and in our case, restaurant or bar, to spawn an experience that is ultimately going to change the way they do things. Doing things online and changing the way you do them is much more friction-free. So for us, it was a little bit of the double-sided marketplace, and the fact that we had a brick-and-mortar component to kind of deal with in line with the marketing funnel.
What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of marketing an app for free versus 99 cents or $1.99?
What we learned is, I think in the case of Tabbed Out, people won't pay to pay. So, it was really clear for us now, despite my mistake of launching the company as a 99 cent to close your bar tab, sort of a Fandango model, if you're familiar with Fandango. Pay a buck, get out of there quick, seemed like a good idea. And we had a lot of people do it, but I think from an app perspective, it has to start free. Now, the Candy Crushes of the world and lots of people in the in-app purchase space have really set the tone for how you monetize off of a initially free app, and I think they know, those types of companies know more about monetizing directly from the app than I would. With Tabbed Out, we charged bars and restaurants, and of course, in the latter stages, if you noticed, hopefully you've used it, we give away a ton of free booze, and the Jamesons of the world pay pretty handsomely for that type of free drink system.
Are you able to tell us a little bit about your revenue stream? Is it advertisements? Do these companies give you, or just explain the revenue process?
So with Tabbed Out, it was, again, bars and restaurants paid a monthly fee, and we had partnerships with big brands like Citibank and Jameson and Anheuser-Busch, and that's how Tabbed Out makes money.
You mentioned earlier that you recently left Tabbed Out. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Founded in middle part of '09 and spent a wonderful 5.5 years building the company and sort of focused on changing the way people pay for things at bars and restaurants. But I'm not a spring chicken. I'm getting older and older, and I like to create. So today I'm a director and board member at Tabbed Out, still very much involved, very much adamant that it's a huge success as a shareholder and just a general fan of the product and the space. But my wife will let me do a couple more of these things, so it's time to go on and create the next company.
Yeah, so the next company, if I'm not mistaken, is Real Savvy. Can you tell us more about it?
Sure. It's I've been a real estate agent sort of on the side since my college years, since '98, and it's just a massive space. The 340x billion of our U.S. GDP is residential purchases and the activity around them. So I love big spaces. I think that today's technology is still very antiquated, and the way that we find homes, the way that we search homes through data and MLS data that's entered by agents, and it's biased and subjective. So long term, we want to really fundamentally change the way people find a home. Short term, in fact, what you'll see from us in the very near future is we're Pinterest for real estate. That you can, if you're like my wife, she spends copious hours not only looking for homes, but she looks across multiple sites. And the same thing that she does with recipes before hosting a party on Pinterest, she'll be able to do with the home search from Trulia, Realtor, Zillow, etc. Collect everything and aggregate into beautiful photo boards that I can see, and our agent, if I weren't the agent, our agent could see as well. And so we're building a platform where consumers can collect and share with spouse and agent, and agents can maybe recapture some control in the search process. As an agent, one of the biggest pains is consumers, my clients, will go to Zillow, Trulia, and all these different sites. And that's great, I can't stop them, but sometimes they find the home in the middle of the night and they, I think that I'm not on my game because I haven't found it. Well, just so happens it's not still on the market, this estimate's completely crazy, whatever it is, but I don't know. And so what we're trying to do is give agents a platform where they can invite their clients and they can all collaborate in one place.
How are you planning to market this? Are there any certain strategies that you've found work best?
Yeah, so we're just getting to that point. So I don't have a cohesive kind of marketing plan really to speak to now. We're still pre-launch, so I'm reserving some of that. But I think the internet wants to be organized. I think Pinterest and Houzz have shown that, and it's become so much data that one day maybe they'll name the marketplace, or sorry, the category. Maybe Pinterest and Houzz or something along the lines of visual organization marketing or something like that. I think all the key, and maybe other people that are thinking about what startup they want to do, I think cars, I think lots of major purchase decisions deserve their entire platform for organization and sharing and deciding what should be private and what should be public. And so that's what we're doing for real estate, and we'll hone our marketing strategy around that premise.
How did you come up with the names for your apps? How big is your team, and how long did it take you to really come up with a name that was available and marketable?
Naming, so hard. Tabbed Out it just about drove me crazy. The name, and you'll laugh because I think it's an awful name, but the name I so desperately wanted was Check Please. And couldn't get that, so I bought Tab Please. And when it was all said and done for Tabbed Out, I think I owned 110 URLs, and all on my dime. And if anybody wants a URL, I'm kind of a GoDaddy broker. But yeah, it's hard. Like that's not my skill set. Like one of the other pieces of advice I'd give to any other founders or wannabe founders is hire people that are smarter than you and better than you at things like that. So my co-founder at Real Savvy, ironically, picked both names. Even though we weren't working together at Tabbed Out, I had contracted him to build our first version of the web and early design for the app and our brand in general. And I was actually walking out of Alamo Drafthouse Ritz, and he said, "I got it." And I was like, "Please, I gotta know what it is." And so I Tabbed Out, and I was like, "The wrestling thing?" So it's been kind of fun through the years. I like the name. I mean, we've been able to establish a pretty good brand in mobile payments, but 2 ACLs ago, I was walking around with a Tabbed Out shirt on, and someone, probably from the UK, walked up and said, "Tabadoo!" So people think it's French. We kind of keep people guessing. And then Real Savvy, we really are trying to actually make this brand about what we're trying to do. It's about real estate, and it's about making agents smart, making them look smart, making them actually be able to leverage technology to their clients in a way that isn't what you always think of when you think of real estate agents.
We have a little bit of time for audience questions. Does anyone have anything to ask Rick?
So from your experience working kind of selling to consumers, any advice on how to get your first customer beyond friends?
It's close enough. What we're going to do with Real Savvy is we're going to use agents. Agents have existing clients. And so I learned this from really a lot of Tabbed Out. Tabbed Out, we were able to figure out that the merchants were the best vector for growing our consumer base cheaply. And they were also the best vector for establishing strong cohort and engagement kind of metrics, which helped us figure out how to grow the business thereafter. So with Tabbed Out, we found these channels of dealers that were engaging merchants on a more frequent basis than we could as a 5 or 6 person team. We gave them the incentives to tell the merchants that it was, a really important thing, and that trusted handoff of someone who was already working on their computer system, telling them this is good software for them, ended up sort of fettering out into the consumer base, the patrons that would go into the bars and restaurants. So, it's so specific to the product, but I think back to this bowling pin kind of focus niche kind of strategy, it's finding a group of people. Small is fine, super small is fine. Just make sure they love it and that they'll advocate for it. And from there, much more so than you would ever get scale of your friends and family, you'll find a way to, whether you have to spend a little bit or whatever to get to the consumer base.
Any other questions?
So, in the tapped out business model, what is the benefit the merchants are getting out of it?
The data is very specific to tapped out, but we have a product called, tapped out is a product called Periscope, and Periscope is while Jameson is keen to know all the people that are drinking Dewar's across the country right now, and tapped out's uniquely able to tell them that because we have the SKU level data from the pods. Merchants want the same information. So you can look at who's checked in with tapped out, know that they had pizza last month and now they're eating a meatball sandwich. Use that however you wish, and more typically use that to get them to come in next Wednesday when you have a meatball sandwich special. So they could get contextual and behavioral marketing capabilities that were otherwise unavailable in a plastic-based world. And that's really what merchants realize is value. A couple of other things just to rep. My other baby is the average tip is 28% with tapped out, so the staff loves it. We don't require that you tip that high. It's just like you see with Uber, people are like, oh, easy, I'll pay it. And table turns are really the most material way that a business of certain constraints and size and staff can grow. You can turn a table more quickly because someone doesn't have to wait 15 minutes for the check, then you make more money. And so those are the things that the merchants really resonated with in our marketing strategy there.
Did you require a proprietary point of sale system to use tapped out?
No, I'll tell you, in hindsight, I kind of wish we would have pursued that early. Owning the full stack of consumer and merchant experience has a lot of advantage, as Apple throughout its existence has really shown, but it's not a space that you can quickly unseat the incumbents. And so really the biggest value and probably my most proud part of our early strategy of tapped out is we integrated with the 10 most important point of sale systems that are out there, Micros, Aloha, et cetera. And that not only helped us a lot as we went further in fundraising because we were the only ones to create that barrier, that technical barrier, but it made it so that we could walk into a merchant, tell them we're going to use everything you've already got. We're not going to change the processing. We're just going to be a button on your point of sale system, and your staff's going to make big tips. That was a really pivotal component of our strategy versus trying to convince them. I mean, your typical restaurant, 6-7 terminals, maybe spends 20-25 grand up front to get these existing systems in, and it's a world of if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of folks and merchants. So I think the industry will continue to shift. I think there's some really important players that are in the market now that are tablet-based, better user experience, and some of the incumbents are also finally coming along with a better experience. But we did not require proprietary for that reason. Although, as a product guy, I would have loved to have controlled what the staff is seeing as easily as we could control what the consumer is seeing, because it's the only way to ensure a great experience. But 1 million people have made hefty investments in those systems, so it's pretty hard to unseat.
Yeah, can you talk about the monetization for Real Savvy and how you see that evolving?
Eventually it'll be about agents. Agents will benefit from a collaboration platform, and eventually they'll benefit from leads. I think what we're excited about with Real Savvy is that if you look at the 86 million people that go to Zillow in this next month, that's the number that they use. Top of their funnel is massively wide. It's mostly people like my wife that are real estate junkies and not really in the act of buying a home. And that yields a really interesting opportunity for us, we feel, because she's not loyal to any one site. In fact, she can't be, because these different real estate portals that are out there today have varying predictability of inventory. At best, the syndicated listing site will have maybe 80% of the homes that are actually on the market. So you got to go a lot of places to sort of collect it. And I think there's a really interesting opportunity of knowing what someone like my wife does for many months, perhaps even many years, in her aspirations to the next home or leveling up her current home. And we think there's some really interesting and very non-trivial revenue sources that could come down the road.
Any questions?
How much market research and how much due diligence do you do for some of the companies like Real Savvy prior to poking out a bunch of money into it?
A few months ago, I'm a big believer in lean. I sent an email to some friends asking if they were looking for a home. And I got someone in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Ames, Iowa, and I didn't even know I knew people in those places, but it turned out I did. I called real estate agents in those markets manually and asked them 2 questions. Are they happy with their leads they're getting? Are they using things like Zillow and whatnot to do so? And if so, what kind of conversion rate are they getting? And it was a disastrous sort of story on the other end of the line that they weren't terribly pleased. So that helped me validate that, even the agents in the most remote markets are really struggling to grow their business. There's 1.2 million real estate agents that are active. Lots of people, everybody knows an agent, but the quality of that match is subject to how you probably meet the agent. It's a brother-in-law that if you don't use them when you show up at Thanksgiving, you're gonna, they're not gonna pass you the potatoes or something. That's how a lot of people select. So one of the key things we want to do in the aspect of lead generation is help match people with someone that's truly the best agent for them. And that was a small manual test and one example of kind of the type of primary research I'd done a little bit before we sort of fully committed to verify that there was a pain point. The other was just simple emails to friends that are fellow agents of how many of your clients sent you a link from one or more of these sites in the last 24 hours, and that was pretty humorous because everybody's trying to manage their clients out of their inbox, Zillow link and a Redfin link and all these things, and it just really established for us that there's a clear opportunity to kind of put the control back into the agent. They're still very critical, obviously, to the transaction, and for us, it's a great way to grow into a consumer base from a very direct path.
Do you have any more questions? I have a quick question. How impactful is social media or a blog for an app? I mean, I've seen some apps have a blog or aren't very active on Twitter but have a few thousand followers. In your experience, has that been beneficial?
Tapped Out benefited greatly in awareness and brand building from the tech rags like Engadget and TechCrunch and GigaOM. It was a story that they like to write, that mobile payments is shifting. It's been sort of the flying card for 12 plus years. One day it's going to happen, and so we benefited from that. But that doesn't necessarily get an investor excited. Having a gajillion downloads and no one using it might as well be just pure vanity. So it depends on the company. If you can read something and immediately use it, I think it could be game-changing from a marketing perspective, from a awareness and growth perspective. Tapped Out did not have that benefit. It does not have the benefit that you can download it unless you have a really cool boss and just run straight out and go get a beer. If you have that cool boss, then please download the app. But what we had to do was focus on more guerrilla style marketing in venue, community managers, promotions teams, things like that. Sort of what you would expect from more of the grassroots type things you see from Miller Lite. Work better for us than a social media blog.
Do you have any funny stories or examples of that? Did you go into restaurants and go up to tables and say, hey, there's a really cool app? Or how did you go about doing that?
It was, it was an interesting experience, like creating it and then trying to go to all these places through the past 5 or 6 years and use it. Initially, we were only at 12 or so places, and so I couldn't go in without them knowing because we were just up in their face all the time trying to get them to do stuff and try stuff. But through the years, I had a great time, and I think I learned a lot from a product owner perspective, pretending to be a consumer and just watching how they how they reacted to it. And, you know, my favorite stories were, oh, I love it, you know, all the things that you'd obviously expect. And, you know, the ones that were, I don't know, I'm trying to think if there's any really notable funny ones. I can't think of anything right now. But it was interesting. Like, I didn't really know how to be, honestly, in some of the cases. If I should tell them that I'm with the company, if I should tell them my sort of relationship with the company. So, yeah, sorry, I don't have anything that's super funny.
Thank you so much for being here with us tonight, Rick. Give a round of applause. All right, we have 2 raffles coming up, so if you have not put your business card in the box, please do so now. And next time, bring your business card, because there will still be raffles. So Kim's going to handle this.
Okay, John and Johan, if I can have you come up. Okay, so John here does business valuations, and he's gonna pick a card, and whoever is the winner of this card, he will have a meeting with. Dinesh Sam.
You have to pull one out?
And Johan, yeah, pull it out. And we're raffling off a ticket for
Yeah, the co-founder
the
meetup.
co-founder meetup next month. What's the date?
November 10th.
November
So if you
10th.
guys never heard of it, you guys check it out. Me? All right.
So thank you everybody for coming. Feel free to get some food and drinks and network some more. Sure. Okay. Johan's gonna say something about the co-founder meetup.
Okay, guys, so if you guys never been to the co-founder meetup, we have this room full of about 150 people, I think we had yesterday here. We charge $10 to cover the food and drinks. We usually get a restaurant in town to actually supply us. But it's a great event to network. If, for instance, Rick is looking for a co-founder for a CTO or something like that, people will come and pitch, or they're looking for hiring people. So that's really what a co-founder is. You can also go to the techmap.com and find out and connect with others as well. We have over 1,000 members and a lot of events happening there, so you can check out all the tech events happening there as well.
Thank you. Oh, and one more thing. There's if you parked in the garage downstairs, there's validation tickets for $5. So make sure you grab one of those before you leave.